Birdy here. I wanted to provide a quick trigger warning for this episode. This episode's discussion, along with the content of the movie, will involve topics of death, child death, murder, suicide, and wartime occupation. Please do take care of yourselves, both mind and body. La, la, la. There you go.
Wah, 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 wah. Sorry, I just totally thought of Little Mermaid. I don't know why.
That's okay.
Okay, welcome to Celluloid Chronicles.
A historical movie podcast.
Okay.
You're Brick.
I'm Britt.
I'm Birdy.
Today, we are going over a movie that Birdy has chosen. Birdy, can you tell us what movie you chose for us this week?
We are watching The Others.
Yay!
From 2001.
Wow.
Yes,
Which is insane that it's 25 years old.
Why'd you mention
I'm so
that?
it's fresh as a daisy.
Fresh as a daisy. It's in this century.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Exactly.
I'm really excited about this movie. Really am. I love the spooky shit, and here we are. Finally, finally, episode 5 in or some shit.
It's about time.
I want the spooky, and this gives all of it for me without the nasty gore bits.
Yeah.
So
I don't mind the nasty gore bits, but it's
that's definitely your realm.
Yeah, and it's not at all required for viewing. So
or it's just flashy blood stuff.
You're just putting lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, there you go.
I do like in this movie that in the others that it's got that kind of noir, old school feeling without being over the top melodramatic.
It's
melodramatic.
It's giving us dark shadows and old gothic movies, which I don't know. It feels like that's what they were going for.
Yes, which I'll have a little bit on that in fun facts, but
yes. It feels like they're going with old school supernatural movie, and it comes across like I didn't feel that when I first watched it 20 years ago or whatever. But rewatching it, and I watched it twice because I love this movie so much. There are perfect moments where it's completely old school, gothic, old style creepiness. So, yeah.
And I watch it, whatever movie we're doing, I watch it at least twice. Usually I watch it once to just make sure that I don't miss anything, a regular watch through. And then I watch it a second time and make all of my notes. And I have watched it twice since then. So.
Yeah, it's just so good. I love this movie. So, and I think it's so underrated.
Yeah, I think so. It did very well box office wise, but I think it's just kind of faded.
It's faded in time.
Yeah.
Especially it was kind of right there before the full internet reaction video phase. It was before YouTube was really quite a thing. And so when we were looking for research and sometimes we check out reaction videos and what other people have said about these movies, there wasn't much outside of basic reaction videos that didn't
reacting to jump scares and
reacting to basic stuff. There wasn't much out there.
I was very surprised. I thought I had found an article that talked about, it turns 25 years old.
Right, yeah, basic.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But that really didn't give a whole lot of information. The most that it talked about was that when it came out, it was kind of like you were just saying, it was kind of in this odd period. So we weren't watching ghost stories anymore. And what we did, it was the paranormal activity, found footage kind of stuff.
Which is good, too.
Right. And I can't remember what the other horror type was that was becoming big at that time. But anyways, it kind of released between these two periods. So even though it did very well, it just kind of faded off after that.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get too much into our own note, shall you take us into the movie?
Yes. So this movie had a U.S. release of August 10th, 2001, and a release in Spain September 7th, 2001. It was written, directed, and scored by Alejandro Amenabar.
Oh, he scored it?
Yes.
Damn.
Yes. Okay. And I love, like I said in the fun facts, a little bit of how he did it or where his ideas came from. Like this, I want to check out some more of his stuff. Okay, so I do like the opening credits to this. I thought it was pretty cool. And we get an opening of Nichole Kidman's voiceover as the character Grace, and she's telling the story of the creation, and it's over these illustrated scenes that we're going to see in the movie. And a caption tells us that we are in Jersey, the Channel Islands, in 1945. And then we immediately get a jump scare of Grace waking up screaming in bed.
Yeah. And, it's actually very rare to get a very specific location and year, which I found really interesting, but it does kind of cater to the specifics of the movie. But yeah, that scream was unnecessary.
I completely had forgotten about it. And I know I told you, Birdy, that when I was setting up, so I was setting my daughter up with, here's your toys and your snack, and here's my water. And I was going to, get on the treadmill and walk for like the first, 20, 30 minutes. And I went to go step onto the treadmill and I heard the scream and I damn near pissed myself. Like I ducked down. Scared the crap out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So great way to start it. It was one of those things like I wish I could have seen the reactions in movie theaters.
Yeah, it was just so sudden. It was so unnecessary. But anyway.
But anyway, so she wakes up and she can hear the children laughing and playing, and we see three people coming up to the house, and this is going to be Mrs. Mills, Mr. Tuttle, and Lydia, who are going to be hired in as the housekeeper, gardener, and maid.
Yep.
And when they get to the door, Grace is at first surprised to see them, but then, oh, of course, you're here. I placed the advertisement for hiring help. Yes, come on in.
And you see Bertha's face going,
yeah, like, oh, excuse me, what?
Okay.
But they just head on in, okay. And we learn a few things in this, kind of a short period. So we learn from Grace that the servants that they did have just kind of disappeared out of thin air. They just took off one day, didn't collect their wages. She doesn't know where they went, and it's been about a week. So she has just put out this ad. And we also, in this time, learn that her husband, Charles, the children's father, he went to war a year and a half ago. And when the war ended, she's not heard anything from him or about him. And she just kind of leaves it hanging in the air. And as she's giving them a tour of the house, she's telling them that all the doors, when you walk through a door, you're going to unlock it, go in, lock it behind you before you unlock the next door. And it is essential that you stick to this. She also tells them, do not let the children play the piano. It's going to set off my migraine. And oh, by the way, we don't have a phone, we don't have radio, and we don't have electricity. So, fun. And during all of this, the servants are a little, like, what the fuck is going on? And I think she says something about how it has to stay dark, but she says something that they're like, what the fuck's going on? What is this? And we get the very kind of ominous, perhaps I should introduce you to the children. So she has them help her close all the curtains, and they're lighting an oil lamp.
And this harkens to our old-fashioned spooky movies, which, I loved it. It was perfect.
I do. And, like, if any woman was born to, creep up and down a staircase with an oil lamp, it was Nichole Kidman. She looks...
Absolutely.
She looks great doing it. Very graceful.
Seeing basically an old spooky noir setup, a gothic setup in our new century with high definition, with our full color technology and everything else, it's great. It's great.
Yeah. I do think it's cute. So they got all the curtains closed, the lamps lit, and Grace goes and she wakes up the children and brings them out. And we meet Anne, the eldest, and Nicholas, the younger brother. And it's this cute little sibling moment of, here, meet the new servants. And Nicholas, what do you do? And Anne, how do you do? That makes me chuckle.
They're very cute together.
Yeah. Although Anne's kind of a brat.
Oh, she is, but you end up forgiving her for it.
Absolutely. And I think, and this is gonna sound terrible, but I think that's what my daughter's gonna be like.
Oh, absolutely.
She's just gonna absolutely terrorize and tease every other child.
And I'm pretty sure my son's gonna be like Nicholas. Yep. And they're just perfect.
Yeah. And I'm gonna forgive her because I love her. And you're just so mean.
But also, you know what you're doing.
I hope so.
She really, at least if we go by Anne, she knows. She knows.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Grace then explains that the children are photosensitive, and exposure to light can cause an allergic reaction of blisters and respiratory distress.
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna come in here and give a little bit on that disease. It is a real disease. When I was doing my research, a lot of people that were just doing reaction videos to this, they were like, well, I think this is symbolic. And yes, it can be symbolic.
I did see a lot
keeping
of that.
Children in darkness and everything. But the gist was they were acting like Nichole Kidman was doing it on purpose. Mm-hmm. But no, this is actually a real disease. It's not exactly history, but it's.
I know when I saw it, the first time when I saw it, I assumed it was fake. I assumed it was something.
Oh, really? Okay.
I assumed it was something they made up for the movie.
If I hadn't heard of this before from other people, I would have probably thought it was fake too, but I had heard of people that were photosensitive, like other kids in my class when I was little. I didn't understand anything about it, but it's rare, but it does exist that people who are exposed to a lot of sunlight have issues. Maybe not to this severity, but it also exists this severe. Yeah. So I'll go into that a bit. It's called xeroderma pigmentosum, and it's a rare autosomal recessive genetic disorder characterized by an extreme sensitivity to ultraviolet radiation, primarily from sunlight. This sensitivity arises from a defect in the nucleotide excision repair NER pathway, which normally fixes DNA damage caused by UV light. So for most of us, we mostly tan, we mostly receive sunlight and get the vitamin D from it and move on with our lives. For these individuals, it does not repair. So individuals with XP, which I find funny because any gamer out there would be like, that's experience, right? Well, not in these individuals. With XP, they develop severe sunburns and freckling at a young age and have a significantly increased risk of developing skin cancers, including basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. Some individuals also experience neurological problems like hearing loss, poor balance, and cognitive decline. And I also read elsewhere that they also might have developmental delays if they're exposed a lot. So, and there's actually no cure for this disease. Treatment focuses on preventing sun exposure and managing the symptoms, which is what we see here. So the prognosis for these people kind of varies depending on literally their exposure through childhood and through their lives to what sunlight they've had. While some individuals may survive into middle age, particularly with milder forms of the disease, others have a significantly shortened lifespan due to skin cancer and neurological complications. Early diagnosis and rigorous sun protection are crucial for maximizing lifespan and quality of life for individuals with this disorder. So, she is doing what she needs to do. This is actually a pretty damn good representation of this disease on what they could have done back in 1945. Yeah. Because I don't even know what the supplement, the vitamin D supplement. So, in other parts I saw was some of the treatment is vitamin D supplements and stuff. That wasn't even a huge thing back in 1945. 1945. So I thought it was really fascinating that this was a full thing. Yeah, I don't think she was doing anything she shouldn't do. Right, yeah. Given the situation.
Yeah. So over breakfast, the children are talking about the previous servants who have left, and Anne is insisting that their dad is going to come back. And she also mentions that, something has happened, and it was when Mommy went mad. Her and Nicholas are kind of bickering about it, and Mrs. Mills, like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. But before she can get any information, Grace comes in and pulls her aside, and she tells her, I wrote the advertisement a week ago, and I put it in the mailbox, and I just went and checked, and it was still there. So the advertisement was never placed. How is it that you guys came here looking for work that you never knew I was looking for? And she's like, oh, well, ma'am, I tried to tell you.
She did.
She did. I tried to tell you that, we worked here years ago, and we came here by a crazy random happenstance looking for work, and, just so happened you were looking for workers, so, it all works out. Okay. And Grace just kind of like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Well, I don't have another choice, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's fine. You guys can stay. And, oh, by the way, sometimes my children have, strange ideas, and Anne might say, weird things, but they're not true. So just don't listen to what she says. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Mills, she's kind of looking at her like, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And goes back into where the children are. And Anne, she just says, it did happen. And then that's the close of that scene. That's all that we get for that.
Yeah. So just to give some context to where we're at this time, I could have mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to get the flow of the film going. So our place for this story is Jersey Island, 1945. So Jersey is actually an island in the English Channel. It's actually closer to France than England, but it's literally an island that's part of England, sort of. They do talk about it. In the movie, she talks about how there was a German occupation, and it's an island, and there's tiny little villages. I should have written this down, but it's only like 45 square miles.
Oh, okay.
But at this time, there was about 40,000 people left on the island. Today, there's about 100,000 people on the island, but it's actually pretty close. It's a pretty populated island, considering, we always think about like the Irish Islands in the Atlantic Ocean, and there's only like 20 people or something. No, not Jersey. Jersey is actually a self-governing parliamentary democracy under the British monarchy, with its own financial, legal, and judicial systems.
Okay.
Yeah, and the power of self-determination. So this is a really interesting situation where Jersey has a constitutional relationship directly with the crown. It is not considered part of the United Kingdom. There is a bailiff, that's the civil head, and a president of the states and head of the judiciary. And then there's a lieutenant governor that represents the head of state, who's the British monarch, so Charles III at this time, and the chief minister is the head of government. Jersey's defense and international representation, as well as certain policy areas and nationality law, are the responsibility of the UK government. But Jersey is still a separate international identity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would not, especially being so small, I would not have.
Right. No.
That was even.
They have a lot of autonomy.
That's really cool.
So a little bit of extra history is that originally, after Christianization in the 5th and 6th centuries, it was annexed into Normandy in 933. And remained part of the Norman possessions when William the Conqueror took England. So that was the Norman conquest. And then in 1204, when Normandy was returned to France, Jersey actually remained a possession of the English crown, but was never formally incorporated into England. So Jersey is a direct possession, or has a direct relationship with the crown, and not the state.
Okay.
So I thought that was really fascinating because that's some very nuanced political maneuvering there.
I didn't want to look up anything until after you had told me about it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up now.
Yeah, I
kind of want to see like pictures, and
the more I learned about Jersey, I'm like, dude, I want to go here.
Right.
But
okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to check
my long list of places I want to visit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so back into the movie, we then see Anne and Nicholas are studying. Grace is teaching them. They seem to be, is it Bible history that they're studying? Okay.
It's all Bible.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't always pay the best attention during Bible class, so, you know. But anyways, so they're studying their Bible history, and Grace is offended. She seems to be offended when the children admit that if they had been persecuted by the Romans, they would have lied and said that they did not believe in God. They were not Christians in order to survive, instead of, admitting to being a Christian and being beheaded.
Right.
And, they're children.
Right.
Which I'm sure you probably have a memory, like some form of memory of this too, but I remember having this conversation in Bible study.
I do.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had this whole justice and pastor. That's the story that they were going over.
Yeah,
so.
and Grace is, telling them that if you can do that and you'll be spared, but, what about when you do die? You're going to be stuck in the children's limbo. And I was a little confused on this. I don't know if this is a Catholic thing.
It's a Catholic thing.
Okay, because I was trying to remember. I don't remember.
There's a children's limbo in the Catholic faith. There's a lot of extra layers to hell and purgatory that aren't discussed, I think, in Protestant religions, which would be Baptist. And the children's limbo, and I'm remembering this all off the top of my head, but it's a place where like unbaptized children, so children that die that aren't baptized, basically innocent children that die, it's all about that innocence, but that unbaptized and the sinful innocence, basically.
The sin at birth kind of a thing.
Yeah, so that is where children end up, and obviously, at least in Grace's belief, and there's a lot of nuance to this, that children that lie, children that sin, basically go to this limbo because they're not so bad as adults, but they're still sinful enough that they end up in their own special purgatory.
Okay. Yeah, this threw me off, and especially when they said there was the 4 circles of hell, and I was like, I thought there was 7.
And well, I didn't really look into this part, but I think it's just the different types of Catholic.
Well, and my husband pointed out that he and we could be absolutely completely wrong about this. He mentioned that the 7 circles of hell might have been like a Dante's Inferno.
It was, yes. Okay. Yes.
So yeah, this
is a very specific and nuanced and super deep canon information on Catholicism that I either have forgotten at this point or never went over. So yeah.
But yeah, so they've started, asking questions, and so she decides she's going to split them up, and it is kind of sad. I feel so bad for Nicholas in this. Yeah. Because, she's splitting the kids up to make them study alone, and his face when she's taking Anne out, and his face, and he says, "Give me a kiss." I would have just absolutely broken, like, nope, okay, we're all going to study together. Yep. It's okay.
Yep.
And he even says, what if I see a ghost? And it's such a bitch response to say to your child, but I kind of love it. And she says, you say hello and keep on studying.
Yeah, I loved that too. Especially as I am now, like in understanding that, I believe in ghosts, but I believe most of them are very benign, and like, that would be what I'd hope I'd do. I'd probably be scared shitless, but that would be what I'd want to do, is just, hi, nice to see you, bye. But I loved this response.
Yeah. And same, there was times a job that I used to have that all kinds of
you've
crazy,
had some shitty stuff, like
weird, crazy ass shit. And I would always tell myself, like, if anything happens, I'm just gonna, play it off and it's gonna be fine. And, and then this shit happened. And then I'm like staring at the counter, pretending like the shit's not happening, because if I acknowledge it, then I have to either run away crying or
yeah, you've actually dealt with it. I'm jealous that you've got
not that great.
I know it's not, and that's what they all say, but also like, damn it.
there have been some cool ones, and I'm sure, if this, gets going, I'm sure we'll share those down the line. There have been some experiences where like, oh, that was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
But anyways, so she splits them up, and a little bit later, she hears crying. She hears a child crying. So she runs up the stairs. She goes to Nicholas. Nope, he's fine. It's not him. She runs in, sees Anne. She's on the floor reading, what's the matter? And she, I wasn't crying. Well, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You can tell me. Why were you crying? And she said, it wasn't me. And well, then who was it? It was Victor. Oh, okay. And I love that while she's telling Anne, like, basically you're making this up, she's closing the curtains that have kind of like been partially open.
I missed that.
I caught it on the second watch, but yeah, so she closes.
I didn't even catch that on the.
Yeah, they were kind of like partially opened, and then she's closing the piano. And Anne is telling her Victor's here, and he's crying because he doesn't want this house. He doesn't like this house, and he doesn't want to live here. But his parents are here. They're doing a viewing, and his dad's a pianist. But don't worry, I told him that he can't play the piano. And Grace is like, oh, really? Okay, and where did he go? And he went out through there. And she's, oh, really? And if he went out through that door, then why is it locked? Well, the door is unlocked and open.
Yeah.
And Grace immediately blames this on Mrs. Mills and Lydia, even though it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because as Mrs. Mills tells her, Lydia doesn't have a set of keys yet.
Yep.
And Mrs. Mills had been in the hallway with her and then went out to the garden, and she saw this. So there was no opportunity for either of them to do this. And Grace just brushes this off as, are you telling me it was me? Are you telling me it's my fault? And she's not the most receptive person.
No, she's not. You really start seeing the stubbornness and pride coming out, trying to keep control.
Yes. And later that night, Anne wakes up Nicholas, and she's telling him that Victor's here, and he keeps opening the curtains, and he's, you're lying, you're making this up. And she tells Victor, come out from behind the curtains so my brother can see you. And poor Nicholas, he sits there for 5-10 seconds. Yeah, and then he gets scared and he turns over. Anne's like, fine, I'll close the curtains. And she gets up and closes them. And I love the way they shot this.
Yes.
Because it gives you that doubt of is it her doing it or is it somebody else? Because you see her get up and close the curtains, and then all of a sudden you hear feet running, and the curtains slide back
and
open.
You vaguely see an outline, but very vaguely. You could question it. You could question if it's just Anne going back up and opening it again.
Yep. And she gets back in bed, and she starts arguing. She's arguing with Victor. But again, we can't see her face, so Nicholas thinks it's her, that she's pretending to argue, she's doing a voice.
Yeah, because it's still a child's voice.
Yep. And he even says, stop putting on that voice. And Anne says, Victor, touch my brother's cheek so he knows that you're real. And you just get this close up of his poor little face, and this hand reach out and touch his face. So again, there's still that possibility of doubt of, is it Anne just messing with him?
Yep.
So he just starts screaming like I would. And Grace and Mrs. Mills come running in, and he's telling Grace, she was scaring me. And of course, Grace is going to assume that it was Anne teasing him. Fair assumption. I would believe it too. As punishment, the next day she is making Anne stand and read Bible verses. And when she reaches a certain point, she tells her, okay, now you're going to ask the Virgin for forgiveness. And at this, Anne just absolutely refuses because she's not going to ask forgiveness for something that she did not do. And Grace is trying to scare her, and she reminds her about children's limbo. But it's at this point that Grace throws out that, I've read about it, and I know that children's limbo, as Birdy has now told us, is only for unbaptized children. And Anne is baptized. And Grace looks just absolutely shook.
Yeah, and she's like, how dare.
Right. Like this thing that she's trying to scare her with is no longer an option.
Again, with the pride and the stubbornness and the I have to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we do see Anne reading from the Bible again, and we learn from Mrs. Mills that it's now been 3 days, and Grace is just absolutely stubborn about it. She's going to keep doing this until she admits fault and asks for forgiveness. Grace is telling Mrs. Mills, how shut off she feels from the rest of the world. She hasn't even seen the priest. The fog is so bad. It's never been this bad. I can't even hear the seagulls. She ends up telling Mrs. Mills, can you please tell Lydia she does not have to run back and forth. She doesn't have to make such noise when she's cleaning upstairs. It's going to set off my migraines. And, yep, of course. So Mrs. Mills leaves. She continues with her sewing, but then we hear movement upstairs, and it starts a little bit and then it's running, and it sounds like somebody dropped something, but it's so loud it's shaking the chandelier. So there's no denying that somebody is up there making noise. And Grace gets pissed off, and she's that's enough. So she gets up, she's going to go tell off Lydia. But when she stands up to leave the room, she sees through the window Lydia is outside being told by Mrs. Mills, obviously not to run around upstairs. So who's up there? So Grace goes to the staircase, and she asks Anne, did you hear anything? She's, hear what? And she's, well, is there somebody here? Tell me. And she pretends that, there's nothing going on. And Grace, tells her, I want you to tell me the truth. But she points out, I told you the truth, and I'm being punished for it. So, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, that was perfect.
Yeah. And so she tells her, again, tell me the truth. And she says, they're in that room. They're in the junk room. So when Grace goes in to check it out, I love this scene. She walks in, and it's all this furniture and stuff all covered up with sheets, and she's kind of walking around, and she starts to hear whispering and little noises.
She's watching us.
Yes, I love that part. Oh, it's so creepy. And when she hears that, she starts ripping the sheets off of everything. So there's all these pieces of furniture. There's this creepy ass Jesus statue. And
I think that was a Mary statue, actually.
Oh, sorry.
Either way.
Don't smite me. She ends up seeing in a mirror, she sees the door closing behind her, so she thinks, oh, they're getting out. And when she runs out, Anne's still there, and she goes, oh, they went there, oh, and down there. And she's hearing voices in different directions and doors closing and this and that, and she's running around. And Anne tells her, they say that this is their house now, and they're going to take all the curtains down. Grace is talking to Mrs. Mills, and who is trying to comfort Nicholas and, trying to calm Grace down. And she's just absolutely freaking out that, somebody's in the house. And Anne shows her a drawing that she's done of a man, woman, child, and an old woman, and there's numbers by next to each of them indicating how many times she's seen them. And this really freaks her out. So now she decides that they have to search the house. She sends the servants off to search, open all the curtains so you don't miss anything. We can see everything. And this is the first time we see her with the shotgun. And when she loads it, and she, puts the barrel in place.
Clicks it.
And she stops. And it's this, it looks familiar. Something about it stopped her. Mm-hmm. And she shakes it off. she keeps going. So while the servants are searching the house, Grace finds a room that is full of old photographs, and she's using the drawing from Anne to compare to these old photographs. But she finds a photo album that at first looks like people sleeping. It's just a whole bunch of photos of what looks like people sleeping. And when Mrs. Mills comes in and tell her that they've searched everywhere, they haven't found anything, she shows her the photo album and asks her what it is. And Mrs. Mills tells her that it's pictures of people who have died. And I know Birdy has some information on this. I understand why they gave this explanation to make it creepier, but it still annoys me. But Mrs. Mills tells her that the reason people took photos of their dead loved ones was in the hopes that their souls would go on living in the photographs, which is not
true.
Is not what that was.
It's a nice sentiment, that's not what they were doing.
Right, and I get it why they said it to, add the creep factor, but would you like to tell us the actual story?
Yes, I would. Death photography was a popular form of portraiture in the 19th century, so the 1800s. Often that photograph of a dead relative would be the only photograph taken of that person, of their physical body. I wanted to say in their lives, but that would be the only known portrait of them. So obviously, the invention of photography kind of really took off in the 1800s, and it coincided with a series of disastrous epidemics and situations in this Victorian society. Cholera, diphtheria, typhoid fever, scarlet fever, and as we know in America, the Civil War. So it was kind of global in European Western countries. And they would take these photos not necessarily for the soul to live on, because as in a Christian religious society, the soul has gone on to heaven, as they would hope.
Yeah,
right?
There's no soul to trap.
There is no soul to continue on, even if they might have wanted that. What it was literally a documentation that this person existed. Mm-hmm. Unlike today, when you would hope everyone in your life would have some sort of picture taken of them at some point, and even if it was a candid shot, Yeah. It was a little harder, and it was extremely expensive. So the death of a loved one would be an impetus point to take that photograph.
Because before they're still around, you can see them, you don't need that.
Right.
Once and they're gone.
Their money was always a factor. The rich might have had, which they did, have far more photos taken. You've seen them. You see the servants set up in front of the giant house. There's a lot of those. But as you can even tell in a lot of those older photos, they were taken at very certain points. Group shots, portraits of a family at a wedding, portraits of a family at some juncture. So they weren't even common, even for the wealthy.
Yeah, it wasn't, you weren't getting candid shots.
Yeah, there's very rare. I can't say candid shots, but they...
very, very rare.
Yeah, it was way different. It was mostly war photography, right?
You planned for it, you kind of
you have to get a photographer.
Yeah, kind of like the Sears photos. You planned for it, you chose your photos, you chose your backdrop,
Yeah, it was more like JCPenney photos.
Yeah, pretty much. And you were kind of choosing what kind of image you're going to portray. A whole lot went into it.
Yes. So in this time when a relative would die, a mother, a child, a father, somebody, they would make these photos where they set them up in certain positions to make them kind of as lifelike as possible. And they would take the shots. So you see a lot of photos of children with their mother, and their mother's tilted. The mother's head is tilted to the side slightly. Mm-hmm. And, it looks a little off, but it still looks like a family photo. Or they would take a shot of a mother with a baby, and the baby was very still, and the mother's slightly blurry because she might have had to move a little bit.
Yeah.
The dead person usually would be very clear in the photograph.
Because it was like the long exposure.
Long exposure times, in order to take the proper photograph. So, and then you start seeing things like families would often paint over the eyes of the deceased relatives to make them appear more lifelike. So there's a lot of interesting photography in this, and it is fascinating if you're okay with that. Seeing that, I mean, even for me now as a mother, it's hard to see all the many photographs of children. Yeah. But yeah, so that was a thing that happened. And obviously, as the end of the 1800s came about and with the dawn of the 20th century, as photography became more common, as home photography became a thing, as more portable cameras became a thing, the trend died down because more photographs of living and happy people were possible. So eventually the photographs of the living replaced those of the dead. So, yeah.
Now we've made it all the way to selfies. Later on, Mrs. Mills and Grace are talking again, and Mrs. Mills is telling her that when she and Mr. Tuttle and Lydia worked in the house before, the owners were very kind to them. They treated them like family. Mrs. Mills was head of a staff of about 15, but eventually the family moved to London, and they came to the house in Jersey less and less. And it eventually got down to just the three of them, Mills, Tuttle, and Lydia. And eventually they left too. And she just kind of leaves we left during when tuberculosis came through. So there was a tuberculosis epidemic outbreak. That's when they left. And Grace does try to ask, why is that when Lydia went mute? Well, yeah, but what happened to her? Because, there must have been something happened. And first of all, Mrs. Mills is obviously uncomfortable, so just let it go. It's not your place. It's not your business.
But Nichole Kidman leans in, and I love the posture. I'm glad we're not on video, but also if we were on video, the way she leans on her hand and leans in like she is here for the tea.
Yes.
She's been so isolated for years. She wants the tea.
She is that coworker that when you say, hey, did you hear about Karen? And she's just, what happened? What is it? But Mrs. Mills, she's, my memory is kind of, not what it used to be, and I'm getting tired. I'm going to go to bed.
She's a proper supervisor.
Yes.
I love Mrs. Mills, by the way.
Grace, after this, she goes to check on the kids, and this is one of those things that, you've been saying she needs to be right. She needs to be in control, and this is one of those scenes that I think very much gets kind of at the layers of it. She apologizes to Anne while she thinks she's sleeping.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry I was so rough on you. I hope you can forgive me. So, she's made the apology, but as far as she's aware, Anna's sleeping, even though she's faking it.
Yeah, because you can see that as soon as Grace moves an inch away, you just see Anne's eyes open a little bit. So
yeah, but I'm sure we all know at least one of those people in our life that I apologized, while you weren't paying attention. But anyways, as she's trying to leave, Nicholas wakes up and asks about their father, and when is he coming back? Why did he go to war? And she's trying to comfort him, but she's very, very obviously distressed. And then she's kind of off on her own and she's crying by herself, but she hears the piano playing downstairs. So when she goes downstairs to check it out, she brings the shotgun with her again. And as soon as she goes to go into the room, the music stops and she walks in, she's kind of looking around, she closes and locks the piano, and when she had first walked in, the door closed behind her. As she walked out, it closed behind her again. So she starts testing the hinges. She's kind of, moving it back and forth to, test the hinges, and it just all of a sudden slams shut in her face, knocking her down.
Yeah.
Which scared the crap out of me. Did not expect that. And she starts screaming for Mrs. Mills, and we can hear the door lock from the inside. So somebody's inside and they've locked her out. Mrs. Mills brings the keys. They get inside the room again, and when she goes in there, there's nobody there, but the piano is open again, even though she just locked it. And she's talking to Mrs. Mills afterwards, and she's telling her, I was in there was nobody there, but I felt like there was somebody there, but I don't think they're human. I think they're diabolic. Something was there. And Mrs. Mills is trying to just kind of calm her down. I know you don't believe me. And no, I've had experiences as well. I've had things happen as well. But she tells her that she believes that sometimes the world of the dead gets mixed up with the world of the living.
I love that line.
Yeah. Well, Grace is very, very upset, and all of everything that's going on is just so in the face of what she believes and what she's been taught. And she decides that she's going to go and she's going to find the priest, bring him to the house, and make him bless the house. And Mrs. Mills tries to talk her out of this, but she's not listening. She takes off. And on her way out, she sees Mr. Tuttle. He's raking up some leaves, and she tells him, I need you to search the grounds. We were told that there's a graveyard, or there's some graves here on the property. I need you to find them and see if it's a family, but especially if there's a little boy, there's a grave for a little boy named Victor. Off she goes. And when she leaves, Mr. Tuttle asks, is she going to be all right? And Mrs. Mills, the fog's not going to let her get too far anyways. Don't worry about it. And he asks her, well, when should we bring all of this out into the open? All in good time. And she points out, she's like, speaking of which, and she indicates the leaf pile, and you see just the very top of a gravestone, and he hurries up and he covers that up with the leaves that he has.
As someone who's seen this several times, that only gets more hilarious.
I know.
Just the whole conversation.
The way that they
do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't include this in my fun facts because I didn't know a whole lot about it, but the guy that plays Mr. Tuttle, he was mostly a comedic actor.
Oh, really?
Who Nichole Kidman had seen on stage and insisted that they hire for this part because she just knew he would be perfect for it. So yes, the way that he delivers his lines
is perfect.
Yes, just so perfect. I love it. But we cut back to Grace. She is walking through the woods, and the further she goes, the thicker the fog gets. And she starts to look a little bit lost. She's hearing and seeing things, or hearing voices, and then she sees somebody coming towards her. But all of a sudden, he comes out of the fog, and it is her husband, Charles. And they have this really weird interaction of, she's, well, where have you been? And he says, I've been looking for home. And, you look different. She tells him, you look so different. And he says, sometimes I bleed. Which,
okay.
Yeah. And I can't remember what my reaction was to this the first time I saw it. Honestly, I probably didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But seeing it now, knowing everything, it's like, oh, that's,
yeah,
that's upsetting.
I also like that he clinks. Did you notice he clinks?
Yes, I have it in my notes. Yes.
We'll talk about that later, but clinks.
Yeah. And so she brings him home, and he does go to see the children for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And
of course they ask him
if, did you kill anybody?
Jesus Christ.
Which, of course, children are going to ask that. I remember in middle school when they brought a police officer to our classroom to talk about, I don't remember, public safety or some shit. And then when they opened it up to questions, the very first question was, have you ever shot anybody?
Jesus fuck.
And the second question was, have you ever found a dead body? So,
Kids are the worst.
Yeah, kids are the worst. We all sucked. They all suck now. But anyways, he does visit with them for a little bit, but then he just goes straight to bed. And over dinner, Grace is telling them, Daddy's not well, so, just give him some time. And the children are asking her, what happens to the people who die in war? And she says, well, it depends what side they were on, if they fought for the goodies or the baddies.
I love that.
Yeah.
Goodies or the baddies.
It's such an English way of explaining it to children. But, so she tells them, it depends. And they start asking questions. Well, how do you know which side, if you're on the good side or the bad side? And you can see her have this little panic of oh, we're about to get into some moral shit that I can't
I don't want
to get into this. So she tells them, that's enough. And she even goes so far as to tell Anne that you can't speak, don't talk.
Yeah, again with the pride and the control and the way Nichole Kidman played this.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I hated it, but it spoke to the character.
Yes. And Anne has tried to ask about, what about the intruders? And now Grace is denying, that...
Yeah, now she's saying there are no intruders. My God.
There's nobody.
The gaslighting.
Yes.
We didn't have it, back in 2001, that was not a common term.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever heard it before.
But thinking about it now, it's that is 100% gaslighting your children.
Yes, very much so. So she tells Anne, stop asking questions, stop speaking. And she starts doing that, that angry child hyperventilating.
God, we see it in our toddlers.
Yes.
Does it not end? It never ends, apparently,
yes.
Because...
Yeah, and just last night, we were eating ice cream and my toddler decided she wanted mine instead of hers. And I told her no to eat hers. So then she sat at the end of the couch and did the angry breathing. So I don't know. But I was like, God damn, I just wrote this part down not too long ago.
Yeah, fully. Yeah.
She's telling her, stop breathing like that. Stop breathing. And then just stop breathing. Tells her to go, go to your room. And as she's leaving, Mrs. Mills stops her and she's trying to comfort her. And, she's telling her, your mother, I've seen the intruders too, but your mom, she's not ready to accept the things besides what she has been taught. But eventually she's going to see them. And she says there are going to be some changes. And
love that one.
Yes. So that just kind of leaves it as that.
The way Mrs. Mills speaks too, I love.
Yeah, they do such a fantastic job of the vagueness is enough to you think oh my God, what are they up to?
Yeah. And I really love her accent. It's like the tuberculosis mom.
Yeah. Later on, when Mills and Tuttle and Lydia, they're all in the little cottage, whatever, where Tuttle sleeps, and they're, discussing it, and she's saying that, the children are not so stubborn. They're, going to be easy to convince, but, she's in denial about everything. And he's, well, what about the husband? And she says, no, I think she says, I don't think he even knows where he is.
Yeah, which could be true, but I don't know. The way that Christopher Eccleston, who plays the husband, plays it, I think he knows, but he also feels stuck.
Yeah, because when he was talking with the children, he looked so sad.
He looks sad the entire time.
The entire time. But when you would expect him to be joyful, being reunited,
it's with his children, I think he knows.
I think so too.
He just is stuck in what he has to do. He's stuck.
He's stuck in his own.
Pattern? He's kind of stuck in a recurring pattern, and we'll get there soon. But he found it because Grace found him somehow. I think we've already given away the ending here, but
if you didn't know, sorry.
But yeah, he's a specific type of haunting. Yeah, I think he knows.
Yeah. The next day, Anne is trying on her confirmation dress that Grace has made for her. And she tells her, you can keep it on, you can play for a little bit. And she goes and she checks on Charles.
I'm going to dive in here. It's a little bit of a longer outtake to talk about this part of the history, but I think it's really important. So I'm going to talk about the German occupation of Jersey Island during World War II. So this kind of also goes for most of the Channel Islands during this time. This is something I'd never heard of, but I found fascinating when I did find about it. So the Channel Islands, which, as I mentioned before, especially Jersey, is a possession of the crown, not part of England or the United Kingdom. The Germans occupied it during the entire war.
Really?
Yeah, all 5 years. the 5-year German occupation of the Channel Islands was a shock to many. So most viewed like Jersey and the other islands as unlikely to be targeted due to their tiny, tiny little island selves, right? Like, why would you do that? But they had some reason. Obviously, the big question for many of the islanders in the summer of 1940, when they knew the Germans were coming, was to whether to stay in Jersey or evacuate to England. So after German occupying forces took St. Malo on the 22nd of June and France surrendered, which was very close to them, Jersey was in the range of enemy guns. Britain decided that defending the islands was impractical due to the risk of loss of life on the islands, which is fair.
I guess, yeah.
But they didn't do a compulsory evacuation of the islands. As a result, it was up to the people of the islands to make their own decisions.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense when she's talking to Mrs. Mills and she says that her family left.
Thank you, yes.
And I wondered, like, well, why the hell didn't you leave? Because I assumed it was like an evacuation.
Oh, not compulsory.
Okay,
so you could choose to leave or not. So as we see in the movie, Grace's family left on their own, and she stayed.
Okay.
So in the end, only about 6,500 people evacuated the islands. That left 40,000 people in Jersey when the occupying Germans arrived on July 1st in 1940. So not many people overall left. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about life during the occupation. So the main thing to talk about is that food. So obviously any outside sources of food were cut off except small quantities from France, probably German deemed okay to cross. Jersey became quickly self-sufficient. So farming methods went very much back to what I'd consider the old ways. So potato fields were given over to corn, and disused mills, grinding mills went back to work. All the old stuff came back. So sugar beets were planted, seawater was boiled for salt, and improvised tea and coffee became the norm. And really, they did pretty good because despite 5 years of dire shortages, when the islands were taken back over, children were in better than expected health.
Okay.
Because of all the agriculture that went on. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about in my outtakes episode is that there was a whole book written on this about the agriculture under German occupation.
Okay.
And how they became this self-sufficient, basically went back to the old ways and all that. So it was really cool. One of the things I did want to talk about here is that about a year into the occupation, work began to turn Jersey into a fortress. So for the Germans, and because they were so scared that the Allies might recover the Channel Islands, it's like, but why? Why the Channel Islands? Like, there wasn't really, even then, it was agriculture. Yeah. It was just people living on islands. Like, there wasn't anything. Well, unless it was like between England. The only thing I can think about, and I am not a war expert, right, is that they just that divisive mark between England and France.
Yeah, maybe. Because it sounds like they were, as far as their agriculture, it sounds like it was just enough for them. So
yeah, it really was.
I don't imagine that, it was like, oh, we're going to, take all their food.
No.
It doesn't sound like. Anyways, I could be wrong, but.
Yeah, and one of the things I talk about, and again, I took it out, but they started off with only 2,000 German occupiers, and at the height of the occupation, there was about 15,000 German soldiers of some level there. Okay. So, I don't know. Anyway, the occupying forces brought in thousands of slave laborers from throughout Europe, including an estimated 1,000 Russian prisoners of war. And obviously, they endured harsh conditions, and many of them not surviving the treatment they received. So The thing is that the islanders themselves, they did form a resistance. No, it wasn't as extensive as people talk about in France, but they did their own thing. Like, they didn't just passively accept this.
Well, and I'm sure with it being a smaller area and a smaller, whatever group, I would imagine maybe comparatively they did quite a bit.
For what they could do. Yeah. So they were very sympathetic to seeing this slave labor happen, and they often put themselves at risk by helping and hiding these workers who tried to escape. In one case, a brother and sister, Harold and Louisa Gold, hid a Russian laborer. They were found out and sent to concentration camps themselves. Sadly, Louisa was killed, and when she was sent to a gas chamber at Ravensbrück in February 1945. Her brother Harold was sent to Bergen-Belsen.
Oh, God.
And he was the only British male to survive.
From Bergen-Belsen?
Yep. Suffering a complete loss of memory of pre-war life during his internment. He actually testified at the Nuremberg trials in October 1945.
Oh.
Yeah, so they were doing things. The worst period came in the final year, following D-Day in June 1944, which islanders believed might be a sign that liberation was also on the way. So it just keeps getting worse. Hopefully it's almost over. They were besieged by the British fleet, with no supplies at all allowed in. Oh, God. Salt, sugar, butter, and eventually bread ran out. Gas and electricity failed, and water was only pumped at intervals. So this kind of talks about how even Grace, Nichole Kidman's character, talks about, well, they just kept turning off the electricity, so we learned to live without it.
Okay.
I turned it back on after the war, but
I mean, yeah.
That might be a self-denial thing at that point. And then finally, the liberation happened. So a week after Hitler's suicide, the German forces in Europe surrendered. So Jersey, however, was not to be liberated until a day later on May 9th, 1945, when British troops arrived in the HMS Beagle. A month later, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth visited Jersey and presented a silver cross and candlesticks for the town church. Thank you so much. It means so much to us. Sorry, it's just like, I'm like, what?
Bitch, how about some, stuff for us to plant, maybe...
So that is a very, very, very short and concise discussion on the German occupation. And wait for my outtakes episode. I'll give you a lot more.
Yeah.
So I'll hand it back to Birdy.
So we see that Grace is having Anne try on her confirmation dress. She has made her a dress and veil. And I did think it was, it's cute. She's like, I look like a bride. Little kids are going to do that. But Nichole Kidman, Grace, for her, olive 10-year-old child. Oh, yes. And she just gets this
you do. She says you do.
Yeah. And it's just, ugh.
I know. To us, yes. But I think that actually is the point.
Yeah.
But you're marrying your religion, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And Anne wants to wear the dress for a while. She wants to play around, like, all little kids do. And she eventually agrees, just don't get it dirty. And she goes to check on Charles, who is still not speaking. She leaves and she kind of has a moment to herself. And when she goes back to Anne to have her take off the dress, at first she walks in and sees her sitting on the floor and she's irritated. And she starts to tell her off, but then she sees her hand. She's playing with a marionette, and it's an obviously old person's hand. It is not a child's hand. And she walks around and she sees an old woman's face through the veil, but it is still her daughter's voice. And this is, very famous from the trailer of, what have you done with your daughter? What have you done with my daughter? You're mad. I am your daughter.
Yes, that we can give fully away. So, yeah.
And Grace just flat out attacks her, which of course you would. This woman has replaced your child. Where the hell is she? So she just full on attacks her. And when she yanks the veil off, she sees that it is Anne. And Mrs. Mills has come in, to see what's going on. Anne runs to her, and she's, she won't stop until she kills us. She's mad. She won't stop until she kills us. She ends up taking Anne to see her father, and she's telling Grace, you need to relax. You need to let us help you. We know what needs to be done. And this is another moment of control freak out of you don't know what needs to be done. What are you talking about? And she goes upstairs as Anne is leaving, and she goes in to speak to Charles, and he tells her, Anne told me what happened. And she starts to try to explain, she attacked her because of, she saw an old woman. He says, no, that's not what I'm talking about. She told me what happened that day. And we still don't really know what has happened, but Grace, obviously she knows what he's talking about, and she's trying to explain, how upset she was. The servants had left. They knew she couldn't leave the house and come after them. And the children know I love them. They know I would never hurt them. I would rather die first. And Charles tells her he's only come back to say goodbye. He has to go back to the front. And he denies when she tells him that the war is over. He denies this. And then she gets upset, and she's, why did you even go? It had nothing to do with us. And she's accusing him that, I loved you and that was enough. I was happy to be here in the dark in this prison, but it wasn't enough for you. Why did you have to go? You just wanted to leave me.
You can see him
breaking down.
Christopher, I didn't know he could do this.
Yeah.
You can tell that he feels differently, but he doesn't know how to explain to her.
Yeah. And the only way, I guess the only way that he can react to this is they do end up having sex. While she's asleep, he tells her, please forgive me, and he leaves. So when she wakes up, he is now gone. And we also find out that the curtains are gone when Anne wakes up, and sunlight is just pouring into the room. She starts screaming. Grace runs in, and she's covering the children with her robe, which is the only thing she has, and she ends up putting them in, I think it's the schoolroom, and she covers the window with the chalkboard because all of the curtains are gone. She cannot find any area that is still able to be blacked out. This is another one of those moments of just the great dialogue between Mrs. Mills and Mr. Tuttle, because she confronts first Lydia trying to demand that she, tell her, something is going on. Tell me what's going on. And Mrs. Mills, she intervenes. And as Mr. Tuttle comes by, she's like, oh, did you notice someone has taken all the curtains? And he says, the curtains? Oh, dear. Why should anyone want to take all the curtains?
I loved it. The sass.
Yeah, and just it comes across as if they're gaslighting her, and it's just so fucking well done. So she's telling them, why we need the curtains. This is my children's lives. And Mrs. Mill is like, well, that was before.
Yeah.
And how do you know that it's not going to be the same now? Have you tried it? These things change. And Mr. Tuttle even says, oh, my sister had rheumatism real bad. And then one day it just cleared up and went away.
Mm-hmm. And the more I've watched that, I'm like,
they were actually trying to help.
They were trying to help, and the way...
Mm-hmm. They're trying to very gently hold her hand through this.
Yeah, because the indication to us is that, the rheumatism cleared up, but she died. Anyway.
So, yeah. But obviously, Grace believes that they have stolen the curtains, and they're doing this for, some kind of nefarious purpose. So she tells them, you're going to help me put the curtains back, and then you're out of here. Mm. And she grabs the shotgun again. I can't remember. Mrs. Mills says something. And anyways, she points the gun at her, and she's telling, give me the keys. Yep. And she accuses them of, you want the house. You want to scare us and drive us away. Yep. So you can have the house. They do give her the keys. As they leave, they decide they're sick of this. And Mrs. Miller says, I'm at the end of my rope. How about you? Yep. All right. Well, let's go uncover the graves.
So I'm going to throw in here, I probably should have thrown it in a bit earlier, but I'm going to talk about, I figured I'd throw in a bit about what First Communion is. Unless you're Catholic, you don't know what First Communion is, right?
Yes, because I wondered about what confirmation is, and is that first communion?
No.
Okay.
No, confirmation is later. So for a Catholic, you go through several sacraments. There's a series of sacraments you're supposed to go through in your life. The first one is baptism, when you're basically a baby, probably as shortly after birth as you can. And then First Communion is the second sacrament. It's the second life sacrament of a Catholic and is one of initiation, marking the formal entry into the full participation in the Eucharist, which is the consuming of the body and blood of Christ. So the wafer and the wine. So typically, children have already begun attending catechism, which is their religious education up until that point, and they receive the first reconciliation beforehand, which is confession beforehand. You've probably heard in other movies and everything about Catholics receiving confession. So this is when that also starts. And usually First Communion is around 7 years old. I'm not sure how old these kids are in this movie. Like, they seem like I would have said 7 and 10.
That's how because I assumed she was 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assumed he was maybe like 8-ish. So.
I couldn't remember if I heard any ages, but like it might be happening a little later, which is, that can happen and it's usually fine. But First Communion usually happens around 7 years old. And because it's considered the age of reason. When you become 7, that's usually the point when children begin to distinguish between right and wrong, which is pretty true. Like, it's usually when, 7-year-olds, they really start like questioning their environment and understanding more, like beyond what they're already doing, right? So First Communion is often marked by a special mass, family celebrations, and the giving of gifts. As we see here, some traditions include wearing white clothing and veils for girls. So you see all the white dress, the white veil. It's all a sign of purity. And yes, it does look like a baby bride in a lot of ways, but it's really meant just to be a sign of purity.
Okay.
For boys, they wear armbands. Also just a lot of white in my memory. But these can vary by parish and region. I will share that since I did go through First Communion, I wore the white in a little bit of a veil. I don't know if it was like a full veil. I don't remember if it was a full veil like that, but I remember wearing like something, and the boys wore like suits. White-ish suits. But I'll share that I was standing up at the altar and they were going through the whole ceremony, and apparently I got either very excited or very overdone, and I fainted.
Oh my god.
I fainted off that goddamn altar.
Poor Birdy.
Yeah, I fell down. The next thing I remember like kind of hyperventilating up at the altar, and then next thing I'm waking up in one of the pews and they're trying to give me water and my father's right there. And yeah, it was a whole thing. I always like to say like that was my first sign that I was not going to remain Catholic. Yeah, that was that. And actually, the funny thing is that later on, I ended up transferring to the Catholic school that was associated with that church. And the other kids remembered me as the kid who fainted at the First Communion.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You're the fainter.
You're the fainter. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll move it on to Birdy, but that's my tidbit. Mm-hmm.
So Grace, the servants have left, and Grace is now just tearing the house apart, trying to find the curtains, and she's, left the children in this schoolroom, I believe, and she ends up upstairs in Mrs. Mills and Lydia's room, where she finds a photo.
Oh, yeah.
And on the back is written the date, December 1891. And when she turns it over, we see Mr. Tuttle, Mrs. Mills, and Lydia dead, propped up on a bench for one of the death photos. And this is the reveal that they have been dead all along.
All along.
During this time that she has been just ramp-sanking the house, the children have snuck out of the house. They have gone to try to find their dad. It's nighttime, so they can go outside. They sneak out through the window, and they end up seeing these 3 graves, and Anne kind of goes ahead and she's looking at them. She reads the names, realizes that it is the servants. And just as she turns around to see Nicholas, she sees all 3 of them coming towards them. Mm-hmm. And this is another one of those, like, yes, this is absolutely a real sibling moment where she's telling him, don't talk to them, come over here, get over here now, don't talk to them, they're dead. And he's like, well, you told me that ghosts wear sheets and chains, and you're always teasing me, and I'm sick of it. And she's like, I'm not lying, get over here now. And he gets this, like, oh shit, look on his face, and he does finally come over to her, comes running towards her, and they run off screaming. Grace hears them. She comes running out of the house. She still has a shotgun. She tells children to get inside, and as the servants are coming towards her, she tries to shoot them, but nothing happens. And this is when we get, Mrs. Mills, don't trouble yourself, madam. Tuberculosis finished us off more than half a century ago.
I love the accent. Tuberculosis, mum.
And she locks them out, sends the children upstairs to hide. They're talking to her through the door. They're trying to tell her, Mrs. Mills, we've been trying to help you understand the new situation, and that now the living and the dead must learn to live together in peace. The intruders are the ones who took the curtains down, and eventually they will find you and find the children.
Yeah, I thought they were going to come right through the door.
I did too.
The way they set that up, like coming toward the window,
it looked like it was about to
happen. They're going to do a full spirit fade through, but no, and that's fine. Honestly, it makes it more realistic. But I figured I'd interject with very tiny tidbit. I'd say, like, there was no 1891 tuberculosis outbreak on the Channel Islands, as far as I can tell. However, tuberculosis was a major cause of death throughout Europe and North America during the 19th and early 20th centuries, especially in urban areas with dense populations and poor sanitation. Jersey, as a fairly populated island, would have been susceptible to such outbreaks. So historical records indicate that the island's authorities were actively engaged in efforts to make people aware of tuberculosis and create better situations to combat tuberculosis and other infectious diseases like cholera. But, it affected them, but it was no different than anywhere else. So the lack of effective treatments led to practices like rest, fresh air, and good food, often in sanatoriums, as we've all probably heard of, but it's mostly palliative care. There was no cure at the time. As for this narrative, there is no evidence of a specific outbreak, but it's just as likely that tuberculosis was an issue on the island and this could have happened. I'll leave it at that, but just a tiny little insert there.
Okay. I just assumed that you were going to tell us that it really was something that happened.
I thought it would be, just because the date was so specific and the way that it was presented, but there's really no evidence.
I wonder now, and I'll talk about it in fun facts, because originally it had a different setting. So it
did have a different. I didn't look at the original setting, but
maybe they had one.
Yeah,
but,
maybe.
Anyways, so meanwhile, while this is going on, the children have run upstairs and they're hiding in an armoire, and we kind of get a reoccurrence of, Nicholas is, heavy breathing, but out of fear. And Anna's telling him, stop breathing like that. Stop breathing. And all of a sudden, the door for the armoire flings open, and there's the old woman from Anne's drawings. And I'll be honest, I jumped so hard, I stabbed myself in my face with my pen.
Excellent.
And Grace has heard the screams, and the servants, they're telling her, the intruders have the children now, and you're going to have to go talk to them.
Yeah.
So she heads upstairs. When she walks into the room, she sees 5 people sitting at a table having a seance. The old woman is there. She is leading, trying to speak to the children, and we see that she is using the method of automatic writing to record their answers, which is then being read aloud by her assistant, a gentleman, as she is asking the children to tell her what happened. What did your mother do to you? And Nicholas is telling Anne, don't talk to them. But she thinks if we talk to them, they'll leave us in peace. So she goes over and she's kind of leaning down, whispering to the old woman. The whole time she's just staring down Grace, who is just standing there, just absolutely horrified, clutching her rosary. And the assistant takes the paper that the old lady has been writing on, and he reads something about a pillow. And the old woman asks, is that how she killed you? And we see Anne and Nicholas and Grace all have this reaction of what? And she's asking them, if you're dead, why are you still here? Why do you stay in this house? And Anne and Nicholas start freaking out. They just keep yelling over and over and over that they're not dead. And Grace, she runs over, she starts shaking the table and ripping up the papers, but they can't see her. They just see the items moving around and tearing up. Suddenly the seance ends. And at this point, we're only seeing the people around the table, and they're discussing, what has just happened. We see Michelle Stark. Michelle Fairley, aka Catelyn Stark, is telling her husband that they need to leave the house because she's worried about their son, Victor, who has seen the little girl and is having nightmares. And the husband tries to say, they don't know anything about the house yet, but she gets angry and she says, they know the mom went mad, smothered her children, and shot herself. And he agrees that they're going to leave in the morning.
Yep.
And as it's splitting, they're all splitting up. She goes to check on Victor, and it just kind of fades out. And we see Grace holding the children, and she's finally accepted what has happened. And she's telling them what happened that day. And she's telling them that when she realized that she had killed them, she got the shotgun and put it, I believe she said, to her forehead.
Yeah.
And she thought that nothing had happened because then there was just nothing. But then she heard the children laughing and she thought that God had given her another chance. And she admits she doesn't know what's going on or where they really are. Mrs. Mills points out that Lydia asked the same thing when she realized they were dead, and then that was the last time she ever spoke. She tells I couldn't have told you this before. The intruders are leaving, but there will be more in the future. Sometimes we'll sense them, sometimes we won't. That's just the way it's always been. And Grace and the children are discussing, Dad, yes, he died. He must have died in the war. They don't know if they're ever going to see him again, but this is our house. We're not going anywhere. We do have this, I think, a lovely moment where when the children realize that the sunlight doesn't hurt them anymore, and Anne is kind of dancing in the sunlight, and we see Victor out in the yard. He sees them, Grace and the children, up in the window as he and his family are getting in the car and leaving. And that is the close of our movie.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little tidbit about seances. I figured I would. So obviously this is the late 1940s. Again, we're not sure exactly. I'm going to give it, this is 6 months to a year after they died or something, right? To early 1950s. We just don't know. Some time has passed because in the other world, it's nebulous, Anyway, I'm going with the late 1940s. Seances and spiritualism, which I'm sure we've all heard before in the 1800s, was a big thing, which is where the seances come from. They weren't as popular as in previous decades, but did continue to hold significance for some. In a post-war context, there was, of course, a lingering grief and desire for connection, which is mostly where all these seances and spiritualism comes from, is people wanting to connect with their dead loved ones. The trauma and loss of World War II was immense. I'll save it for another video, but it was almost a quarter of the world population. Let's put it that. And would have undoubtedly driven people to seek comfort and connection with deceased loved ones, and thus enter seances and other medium events. But also because it wasn't as popular, because during this rising age of secularism, science, skepticism, and futurism, it's not as anywhere near as popular as the post-Civil War and World War I was for seances. So I thought it was really interesting to have it here. They could have done different things for this, especially in the late 1940s, but that they chose a seance was kind of interesting. So I will say, as some general afterthoughts, I thought it was really interesting how they did this. I could go into a whole information about, since the Channel Islands are Celtic and there's this in Celtic mythology, there's a line between the world of the living and the world of the dead, and it's often blurred, where both worlds exist within a larger concept and they merge and blur together at different times and under different circumstances. But this is the concept of where Grace and her children were known as the otherworld. So that's what I have, and we can go right into fun facts.
Okay. I do actually have quite a few fun facts for this one. I'll try to get through them quickly. But the opening, when you hear Nichole Kidman open with the story of the creation, the beginning line that is based off of a BBC radio program called Listen with Mother that ran from 1950 to 1982, and it always began with, "Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin."
Nice.
Which I just thought that was kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise was an executive producer.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. This was the last film that he and Nichole Kidman collaborated on, because this was towards the end of their divorce, or their marriage, and their divorce was actually finalized the same week that the movie premiered. Nichole Kidman, she actually quit at one point during rehearsals due to the nightmares she was having, saying that it was just too much to handle the emotions.
Because it was a mother killing her children.
Mm-hmm. Which, understandable. I don't think
I'd do it.
Alejandro Amenabar, who wrote the script, he originally wrote the script in Spanish, and the original setting was in Chile. But he had to change it due to the producer's demands, and that's why it was translated to English and then set in Jersey. But that, and I'm not positive, but I think that might be why something with this style is just so unique.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see it in a Chilean setting. You know, one day, if they ever actually decide to redo it, I hope they do it in like Spanish setting, because
there is a remake has been approved.
Really?
But I haven't been able to find any information on it going forward.
But someone's talking about
Somebody's talking about
it. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he based the style, these books that he had written as a child, or I'm sorry, these books he had read as a child that were written in the 30s and 40s. He based the style of the movie on the drawings from these books.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he based a lot of the story and the script on his Catholic school education.
That also makes sense.
Yep. And we already talked about the fact that when Grace is loading the shotgun, she pauses, and, you know, now we know she had used that to end her life. Yep. So that's why that motion seemed so familiar to her. The graves, when we see the graves for the servants, Mrs. Mills, she is the only character with an Irish accent, and her grave has a Celtic cross. And Amenabar, the director, he is actually in one of the death photos of the three men. Yep, he's the dude with the mustache on the far right.
Yeah, so actually, I'll add that. I don't know if you have this, but about the photos, which also upset me, but also was neat at the same time. So the little thing I read was that they actually were using, and some of them are actual death photos, death photography from that period. And they had this whole book of them, but then someone lost them. Yeah.
Oh.
Which is upsetting on a historically preservation level.
Yeah.
So they had to remake a lot of the photos, which is why why he ended up in one of the photos as a remake of some of the photos.
And that had to have been upsetting for whoever provided it.
Like, I'm upset that you lost literal historical photos. Cool, you remade them. And yes, he's in one of those the director's in one of those photos, but also you lost historical photos.
As you pointed out, when we see Charles coming through the fog, we hear the clanking. Mm-hmm. And I left these two bits out because they were just so quick, but there are parts where Anne is telling Nicholas that ghosts wear chains and sheets. That is why they added the clanking, the chain rattling sound.
That's really cool, actually.
Yeah. The director, he would randomly play scary music just to keep people on edge, which, I mean, it's better than what some directors have done in the past.
They also kept them in the dark for 3 months to keep
that's
them
my next
pale.
one.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not
No, you're good. You're good. The child actors were kept away from sunlight for the 3.5 months of filming. And Amenabar said, I was feeling sad for them because they couldn't be exposed to sunlight to keep their skin as white as possible. Of course, they were in makeup, but they had to stay pale. So when they went out, it was night, like little vampires. Poor kids. And my last note, which I will include a link to the trailer for this, there is a Bollywood remake. I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, but it is called Hum Kwan Hai, and I will include a link to the trailer for that.
Yeah, I kind of want to watch it just because it's fascinating. I want to see this setting in other cultures. Like, that's pretty neat. So I actually don't have a ton of fun facts because I was able to actually include most of them, and besides the ones that I want to cover further in my outtakes episode. But I did want to mention that the white sheets and the clanking, that belief actually came from very old burial practices. So obviously in the old days, burial practices and grave goods were supposed to offer insights into what the person being buried believed, and also what the family and loved ones wanted to give them on their journey into the afterlife. So bodies, the physical bodies, were treated with care, possibly and potentially washed, and then wrapped in winding often white sheets, which we know now as the death shroud. And that's the idea where the white sheeted ghost comes from, because that's the death shroud hanging over them. And then the chains are more for Christian ideals, which is the chains symbolizing the entrapment of the soul in purgatory and the weight of past sins. So that's where that comes from. And then just a little fact on Jersey itself. In recognition for the help given to him during his exile in Jersey, during part of his exile, King Charles II, who we mentioned last episode, but in the 1640s, he gave the Vice Admiral Sir George Carteret, the bailiff and governor of Jersey, a large grant of land in the American colonies in between the Hudson and Delaware rivers, which George Carteret promptly named New Jersey.
Oh, okay. New Jersey. That's where it starts.
That's where New Jersey comes from.
Oh, park the car in the garage.
And then your stock carburetor gets stolen. So anyway, yeah, that's where New Jersey comes from. So a little bit on seances. So also during World War II, in November 1941, there was a woman named Helen Duncan who held a seance in Portsmouth at which she claimed the spirit materialized of a sailor on the HMS Barham. And she was saying that the boat had been sunk. So because the HMS Barham actually had sunk, and no one should know about this, and only the relatives of the people who had died knew, the Navy started to take interest in Helen Duncan's activities. Okay. So they started looking into her activities. So they're watching her this whole time. But then finally in 1944, two lieutenants were in her audience at a seance she did on January 14th, 1944. One of those was Lieutenant Worth, who was not impressed as a white cloth figure appeared behind the curtains, claiming to be his aunt, but he had no deceased aunt. In the same sitting, another figure appeared claiming to be his sister, but Worth replied that his sister was alive and well.
Girl, you're supposed to keep it vague.
Right? So Worth was so disgusted by the seance, he reported it to police. And this was followed up on January 19th when an undercover policeman arrested Helen Duncan at another seance as a white shrouded manifestation appeared. So This actually proved to be Duncan herself in the sheet in a white cloth, which she attempted to conceal when she was discovered, and then she was arrested. To keep a long story, but hilarious, funny story that I think people should totally look into, Helen Duncan ultimately was one of the last people convicted under the Witchcraft Act of 1735.
No shit.
Yes. So I wanted to include just a little bit there. And then I also wanted to include this story, just a little bit of this about a woman who discovered when she was 18. So she was born in occupied Jersey in 1944, and then she discovered when she was 18 that she was an illegitimate child, and she discovered that her father was a Paul Klimazuski, that he might have been a Polish conscript into the German army. So her mother had an unmarried affair with a German occupying soldier. This is Pauline Botting, who her mother, Olive Lebrun, never revealed her father's true identity, and when she found it out, she was obviously very ashamed just because of the situation, you know, to be an illegitimate child and then to know you were the product of an affair with the enemy.
Yeah.
The title of this article is called Jersey Occupation, My Mother Slept with the Enemy. But I'm like, but he was a Polish conscript, which in my mind means he was a Polish male person that was forced to be in the army.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that gives any,
they probably wouldn't have seen a whole lot of looking at it like, oh, your father was in the Nazi army. Yeah. They're not gonna look into the details. They're not gonna care.
No, they won't. You just should be ashamed, you know. Yeah. So I loved her sign. Once she found out the truth, she said it would actually be nice to know what happened before I popped my clogs. I assume that's a Jersey euphemism for dying.
I'm going to try to remember that.
Yeah, so she didn't know until she was 18 that she was illegitimate, and she was led to believe that her father had died. She actually found a photograph of her father in her late maternal grandfather's belongings during the 1970s. He was one of thousands of German army soldiers who invaded the Channel Islands in 1940 under the direction of Hitler. Women who spent time with the soldiers were known as jerry bags and were shunned. Miss Botting also says, the shame of being illegitimate 75 years ago is horrendous, but being the child of a member of the occupation was even worse. Mr. Klimazuski, her father, was an assistant to an officer stationed at the Lebrun family's house, which he visited daily. When Miss Lebrun fell pregnant, she was ostracized by family and friends. So, and it wasn't until later that her daughter, Miss Botting, even met some of her family members as an older woman. All right, well, shall we go into our sources?
Sure. You want to start?
Sure. So obviously I discussed several sources. This movie gave me a lot of information to deal with, which was really great. I obviously discussed xeroderma pigmentosum, which I got information from Photosensitivity Disease by Medline Plus. I discussed Jersey Island, which I got information off Wikipedia. I also discussed the death photography from Taken from Life, The Unsettling Art of Death Photography, an article. And then another article, The Morbid Historical Tradition Behind This Haunting Scene in The Others. Then I talked about the German occupation, which was Guernsey Islands Files Reveal How Islanders Defied Nazi Occupation, the German occupation of Jersey, the History of Liberation by the Jersey actual website for Jersey, Life in Jersey Under the Nazi Occupation, another article. Then I talked about Catholic First Communion, which was an article by a Catholic source. Then I talked about tuberculosis from sources Tuberculosis, the White Plague, Tuberculosis, a Fashionable Disease, ? Because that's a whole other story. Then I talked about seances, and those were a couple articles on talking to the dead, spiritualists and seances, and the complicated yet inspiring history of spiritualism, another article. Then I also talked about the Celtic Otherworld from Myth and Folklore Wiki. I also mentioned Helen Dunklin, a spiritualist, which I got from Wikipedia. And then what I just mentioned was Jersey Occupation, My Mother Slept with the Enemy. And a lot of these sources I will also use in my outtakes episode.
For my sources, the good old standbys, you got IMDb and Wikipedia. There were 2 articles. I know one was a Mental Floss article. There was another one that the name is escaping me, but I will make sure that that's included in the links as well. And the YouTube link for the Bollywood version of this movie.
All right. Well, thank you. And do you want to talk about your pick for our next movie?
Yes. So kind of coming off the talk about spiritualism and seances, my pick for our next movie is Late Night with the Devil. And this is a 2023 movie, but it is set, I believe, in the late 70s.
It looks very 70s.
Yeah, and I've only seen it once before, and it was fucking awesome.
I have not seen it all, so I'm excited. Another
very excited
horror movie, but spookiness.
Yep, and it's going to go into a lot of, like I said, spiritualism, seance, and possession. And as you were talking about with Helen Duncan, the whole, pretending to
what's real, what's fake.
Yep, we're going to have some of that in there. So this one, I think, is going to be fun.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to Celluloid Chronicles, a historical movie podcast. Please like and subscribe to us wherever you listen, and we hope you join us again soon.
And always remember,
live like you're making history.